2 Chronicles chapter 26. Uzziah strengthens Judah's defense. Then all the people of Judah took Uzziah, who was 16 years old, and made him king in place of his father Amaziah. He built Eloth and restored it to Judah after the years slept with his fathers. Uzziah was 16 years old when he became king. Then he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jechaliah from Jerusalem. He did what was right in the eyes of Adonai, just as his father Amaziah had done. He continued to seek God in the days of Zechariah, who had understanding through the visions of God. As long as he sought Adonai, God made him prosper. He went out and fought the Philistines and breached the wall of Gath, the wall of Jabneh, and the wall of Ashdod. He built cities in Ashdod and among the Philistines. God helped him against the Philistines, against the Arabs who dwelt in Gur-baal, and against the Maonites. The Ammonites paid tribute to Uzziah, and his fame spread abroad, even to the border of Egypt, for he became exceedingly strong. Moreover, Uzziah built towers in Jerusalem at the corner gate, the valley gate, and at the angle, and fortified them. He also built towers in the wilderness and dug out many cisterns, because he had much livestock, and he had farmers in the foothills, and in the plain, and vine dressers in the mountains, and in the fertile fields, for he loved the soil. Uzziah also had a well-trained army ready to go out to battle by divisions, according to the numbers mustered by the hand of Jael the scribe, and Maaseiah the officials under Hananiah, one of the king's chieftains. The total number of family leaders over the fighting men was 2,600, and under their command was an army of 307,500, trained for war with the mighty power to support the king against the enemy. Uzziah provided shields, spears, helmets, body armor, bows, and slingstones for the entire army. In Jerusalem he made machines designed by skillful men to be used on the towers and on the corners to shoot arrows and hurl large stones. So his fame spread far, and he was marvelously helped until he became strong. Uzziah usurps the Kohanim. But when he became strong, his heart grew so haughty that he acted corruptly, for he trespassed against Adonai his God, by entering into the temple of Adonai to burn incense upon the altar of incense. Then Azariah the Kohen with 80 valiant Kohanim of Adonai followed him in. They opposed Uzziah the king and said to him, "It is not for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to Adonai, but for the Kohanim, the descendants of Aaron, who have been consecrated to burn incense. Get out of the sanctuary, where you have acted unfaithfully. You will have no honor from Adonai Elohim." Then Uzziah, who had a censer in his hand, ready to burn incense, became angry. While he was raging at the Kohanim, Zaadet broke out in his forehead, right in front of the Kohanim in the house of Adonai, beside the incense altar. When Azariah, the chief Kohen, and all the other Kohanim stared at him, behold, his forehead had Zaadet. So they rushed him out of there. Indeed, he himself hurried to get out, because Adonai had smitten him. King Uzziah had Zaadet until the day of his death. He lived in a separate house with Zaadet, for he was cut off from the house of Adonai. Jotham, his son, was in charge of the king's house and governed the people of the land. Now the rest of the acts of Uzziah from the beginning to end were recorded by the prophet Isaiah, the son of Amos. So Uzziah slept with his fathers, and they buried him with his fathers in the field of the burial that belonged to the kings, for they said he had Zaadet. And then Jotham, his son, became king in his place. 2 Chronicles chapter 27. Good King Jotham prospers. Jotham was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jerushah, the daughter of Zadok. He did what was right in the eyes of Adonai, just like his father Uzziah had done. But unlike his father, he did not enter into the temple of Adonai. The people, however, acted corruptly. He rebuilt the upper gate of the house of Adonai. And he did extensive building on the wall of Ophel. He also built towns in the Judean hills and forts and towers in the forests. Jotham also fought the king of the Ammonites and prevailed against them. That year the Ammonites paid him 100 talents of silver, 10,000 measures of wheat, and 10,000 measures of barley. The Ammonites brought him the same amount also in the 2nd and 3rd years. Jotham became powerful because he ordered his ways before Adonai his God. Now the rest of the acts of Jotham and all his wars and his ways, behold, they are written in the book of the kings of Israel of Judah. He was 25 years old when he became king and reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. Jotham slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David. Ahaz his son became king in his place. 2 Chronicles chapter 28. Ahaz sinned in the valley of Ben-Hinnom. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. But he did not do what was right in the eyes of Adonai, as his father David had done. But he followed the way of the kings of Israel, and even made molten images for Baalim. Moreover, he buried the incense in the valley of Ben Hinnom, and burned his children in the fire, according to the abominations of the nations whom Adonai had driven out before Beni Israel. He offered sacrifices and burnt incense in the high places, on the hills, and under every leafy tree. Therefore Adonai, his God, gave him into the hand of King Aram, who defeated him and took away from him many prisoners and brought them to Damascus. He was also given into the hand of the king of Israel, who inflicted many casualties on him. In one day Pekah, the son of Remaliah, killed 120,000 valiant soldiers of Judah, because they had forsaken Adonai, the God of their fathers. Mercy shown to Judah's captives. Also Zikri, a warrior from Ephraim, killed Maaseiah, the king's son. Azrikam, the officials in charge of the palace, and Elkanah, the son to the king, the second to the king. Men of Israel carried away captive 200,000 of their kinsmen, women, sons, and daughters. They also took away a great deal of plunder from them they brought to Samaria. But a prophet of Adonai named Obed was there, and he went out to meet the army on its return to Samaria. He said to them, Behold, because Adonai, the God of your fathers, was angry with Judah, he has given them into your hand, and he will slaughter them in a rage that reaches to heaven. So now you intend to bring the bondage of the children of Judah and Jerusalem as your male and female slaves. Are you also not guilty of transgressions against Adonai your God? So now listen to me. Send back the prisoners you have captured from your kinsmen, for the fierce wrath of Adonai is upon you. Then some of the leaders of the sons of Ephraim, Azariah the son of Jehohanan, Berechiah son of Meshillemoth, Jehezekiah son of Shallum, and Amasa son of Hadlai, confronted those coming from the campaign and said to them, Do not bring the captives in here, for that would cause us to trespass against Adonai. Do you intend to add to your sins and our guilt? For our guilt is already great, and his fierce anger is already against Israel. So the soldiers released the captives and the plunder in the presence of the chieftains and the entire congregation. And the men designated by name stood up and took the captives, and they clothed all who were naked from the plunder. They gave them clothes and sandals, food and drink, anointed them, led all the feeble ones on donkeys, and brought them back to their kinsmen at Jericho, the city of palm trees. Then they returned to Samaria. Ahaz leads Judah into idolatry. About the same time, King Ahaz sent to the kings of Assyria for help. Once again, the Edomites had come and invaded Judah and taken captives. While the Philistines had raided the towns in the foothills and in the south of Judah, they captured and occupied Beth Shemesh, Ajalon, and Gederat, as well as Soho, Timnah, and Gimzo with their villages. For Adonai humbled Judah because of Ahaz, king of Israel, for he threw off restraint in Judah and trespassed against Adonai. Tilgat-Pilneser, king of Assyria, came against him and afflicted him instead of strengthening him. Even though Ahaz plundered the house of Adonai, the house of the king and the princes, and gave it to the king of Assyria, it did not help him. In his time of distress, the same king, King Ahaz, acted even more unfaithfully to Adonai. He even sacrificed to the gods of Damascus after he had been defeated. For he said, Because the gods of the kings of Aram helped them, I will sacrifice to them, and they will help me. But they caused the downfall of him and all Israel. Ahaz even collected the utensils of the house of God and cut the utensils of the house of God into pieces. He shut the doors of the house of Adonai and made himself altars in every corner of Jerusalem. In every town of Judah he made high places to burn incense to other gods, provoking Adonai, to the God of his fathers. Now the rest of his acts and all his ways, the first and the last, behold, they are written in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. Then Ahaz slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of Jerusalem. But he was not brought into the tombs of the kings of Israel. Hezekiah his son became king in his place. 2 Chronicles chapter 29. Hezekiah restores the temple. Hezekiah became king when he was 25 years old, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abijah, the daughter of Zechariah. He did right in the eyes of Adonai, just as his father David had done. In the first month of the first year of his reign, he opened the doors of the house of Adonai and repaired them. He brought in the Kohanim and the Levites and assembled them to the eastern square. Then he listened to them. Listen to me, Levites, sanctify yourselves, and sanctify the house of Adonai, the God of your fathers, and remove the defilement out of the holy place. Our fathers acted unfaithfully and did evil in the sight of Adonai Eloheinu, and have forsaken him. They turned their faces away from Adonai's dwelling place and turned their backs on him. They also shut the doors of the porch and put out the lamps. They did not burn incense or offering any burnt offerings in the holy place to that of God, the God of Israel. Therefore the wrath of Adonai was upon Judah and Jerusalem. He had made them an object of horror, dread, and scorn, as you are seeing with your own eyes. Behold, for this our fathers have fallen by the sword, and our sons, daughters, and wives are in captivity. Now it is in my heart to make a covenant with Adonai, the God of Israel, so that his fierce anger may turn away from us. My sons, now do not be negligent, for Adonai has chosen you to stand before him, to serve him, and to be his ministers, and to burn incense to him." Then these Levites arose from the sons of Kohath: Mahath, son of Amasai, and Joel, son of Azariah; from the sons of Merari: Kish, son of Abdi, and Azariah, son of Jehalel; from the sons of Gershon: Joah, son of Zimna, and Eden, son of Joah; from the sons of Elizaphan: Shimri and Jael; from the sons of Asaph: Zechariah and Mattaniah; from the sons of Haman: Jehiel and Shimei; and from the sons of Jeduthun: Shemaiah and Uzziel. When they gathered their brothers and sanctified themselves, they went in, as the king ordered, according to the words of Adonai, to cleanse the house of Adonai. So the Kohanim went into the inner part of the house of Adonai to purify it. They brought out the courtyard of the house of Adonai, every impure thing that they found in the temple of Adonai. And the Levites received it and carried it out to the Kidron Valley. They began the consecration on the first day of the first month, and by the 8th day of the month they reached the porch of Adonai. For 8 days they consecrated the house of Adonai, and finished on the 16th day of the first month. Then they went in to King Hezekiah and said, "We have purified the entire house of Adonai, the altar of burnt offering with all its vessels, the table and the rows of bread with all the vessels. We have also prepared and consecrated all the articles that King Ahaz discarded in his unfaithfulness while he was king. Behold, they are now before the altar of Adonai." Then King Hezekiah arose early, gathered the leaders of the city, and went up to the house of Adonai. They brought 7 bulls, 7 rams, 7 lambs, and 7 he-goats as a sin offering for the kingdom, the sanctuary, and Judah, and he commanded the Kohanim, the sons of Aaron, to offer them on the altar of Adonai. So they slaughtered the bulls, and the Kohanim took the blood and sprinkled it against the altar. Next they slaughtered the rams and sprinkled the blood against the altar. Then they slaughtered the lambs and sprinkled the blood against the altar. The he-goats for the sin offering were brought before the king and the congregation, and they laid their hands on them. The Kohanim then slaughtered them, and purified the altar with their blood to make atonement for all Israel. For the king commanded that the burnt offering and the sin offering to be made for all Israel. He stationed the Levites in the house of Adonai with cymbals, harps, and lyres, according to the command of David, of Gad, the king's seer, and Nathan the prophet, for the command was by the authority of Adonai through his prophets. So the Levites stood with David's instruments, and the Kohanim with the trumpets. And Hezekiah gave the order to sacrifice the burnt offerings on the altar. When the burnt offering began, the song of Adonai also began with trumpets. Together with the instruments of King David of Israel, the entire congregation prostrated themselves, while the singers sang and the trumpeters played. All this continued until the burnt offering was finished. Now at the completion of the burnt offering, the king and all who were present with him knelt down and worshipped. Moreover, King Hezekiah and the officials ordered the Levites to sing praises to Adonai with the words of David and Asaph the seer. So they sang praises with gladness and bowed down and worshipped. And Hezekiah responded and said, "You have now consecrated yourselves to Adonai. Come near and bring sacrifices and thank offerings into the house of Adonai." The congregation brought in sacrifices and thank offerings, and all whose heart were willing brought burnt offerings. The number of the burnt offerings that the congregation brought was 70 bulls, 100 rams, and 200 lambs, all of these as burnt offerings to Adonai. And the animals consecrated as sacrifices were 600 bulls, 3,000 sheep, and 3,000 sheep. The Kohanim, however, were too few to flay all the burnt offerings, so their kinsmen, the Levites, helped them until the work was completed, and until the other Kohanim had been consecrated themselves. For the Levites had been more conscientious to consecrate themselves than the Kohanim. There were also a great many burnt offerings, along with the fat of the peace offerings and the drink offerings at every burnt offering. Thus the avodah of the house of Adonai was reestablished. Hezekiah and all the people rejoiced because of what God had enabled the people to accomplish, because it happened so suddenly. 2 Chronicles chapter 30. Hezekiah and all Israel celebrate Pesach. Hezekiah then sent word to all Israel and Judah, and also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh to come to the house of Adonai at Jerusalem, to keep the Passover for Adonai, the God of Israel. The king and his officials and the entire congregation in Jerusalem had decided to celebrate Passover in the 2nd month, for they were not able to celebrate it at a regular time, since not enough Kohanim had consecrated themselves, nor had the people assembled in Jerusalem. The matter seemed right in the eyes of the king and of the entire community, so they decided to issue a decree and to proclaim it throughout all Israel from Beersheba to Dan, calling the people to come to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover for Adonai, the God of Israel, for it had not been celebrated as prescribed for a long time. At the king's command, the couriers went throughout all Israel and Judah with letters from the king and his officials, saying, "You, men of Israel, turn back to Adonai, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, and he will return to the remnant of you who escaped from the hand of the kings of Assyria. Do not be like your fathers and brothers who acted unfaithfully against God, Adonai, the God of your fathers, so that he made them a horror, as you see. Do not stiffen your neck as your fathers did, but reconcile to Adonai and come to his temple, which he has consecrated forever, and worship Adonai your God, that his burnt anger may turn away from you. For if you return to Adonai, your brothers and children will receive compassion before their captors and will return to this land. For Adonai your God is compassionate and merciful. He will not turn his face from you if you return to him." As the couriers traveled from town to town through the country of Ephraim and Manasseh, and as far as Zebulun, they were scorned and mocked. Nevertheless, some men from Asher, Manasseh, and Zebulun humbled themselves and came to Jerusalem. The hand of God was also on Judah to give them one heart to do what the king and the officials commanded by the word of Adonai. Now a very large assembly gathered in Jerusalem to celebrate the feast of Matzah. In the 2nd month, they arose and removed the altars and all the incense altars that were in Jerusalem and threw them into the Kidron Valley. Then they slaughtered the Passover lamb on the 14th day of the 2nd month. The Kohanim and the Levites were ashamed and consecrated themselves and brought burnt offerings into the house of Adonai. They stood at their posts prescribed in the Torah of Moses, the man of God. The Kohanim sprinkled the blood that they received from the hand of the Levites, for there were many in the congregation that had not consecrated themselves. Therefore the Levites were in charge of slaughtering the Passover lambs for everyone that was not ceremonially clean, in order to consecrate them to Adonai. Although a great multitude of the people, many of them from Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun, had not purified themselves, they still ate the Passover lamb, contrary to what is written. But Hezekiah prayed for them, saying, "May Adonai, who is good, atone for everyone who prepares in his heart to seek Adonai, the God of his fathers, even though he is not pure, according to the rules of the sanctuary." Adonai heard Hezekiah and healed the people. So the children of Israel who were present in Jerusalem celebrated the feast of Matzah for 7 days, and with great gladness the Levites and the Kohanim were praising Adonai every day with loud instruments for Adonai. Then Hezekiah spoke encouragingly to all the Levites who demonstrated good understanding of the service of Adonai. For 7 days they ate their assigned portion while sacrificing peace offerings and praising Adonai, the God of their fathers. Then the whole congregation decided to celebrate 7 more days. So for another 7 days they celebrated with gladness. Hezekiah, king of Judah, contributed 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep to the congregation. And the officials contributed 1,000 bulls and 10,000 sheep to the congregation. And great numbers of Kohanim consecrated themselves. The entire assembly of Judah rejoiced with the Kohanim and the Levites and all who had assembled from Israel, both the strangers coming from the land of Israel and the residents from Judah. There was great joy in Jerusalem, for nothing like this had happened in Jerusalem since the time of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. Then the Levitical Kohanim arose and blessed the people, and Adonai heard their voice, for their prayer reached heaven, his holy dwelling place.